alcohol is a big problem in our society today. Many people drink in situations such as party or in other social situations. Especially around students, there exists an idea of students that they like to drink a lot. When we think about the student life, we think about exams, lectures, and deadlines, but we also think about partying and drinking. Perhaps you also like to have a beer or wine whenever you're at a party with friends. Yet somehow, we never seem to think that students can drink too much, despite the ideas we have about them. Drinking many times a week is something socially acceptable, and we never seem to think about whether that is good or not, or something potentially not okay and indicative of an addiction. That's why we will try and answer the question, why is excessive alcohol use among students normalized?
Our research question is, why is excessive alcohol abuse among students normalized?
Drinking is for many Dutch students an important part of the student life. In the student life, there are many parties and yes, people drink there. In the Netherlands, 94% of Dutch students drink alcohol. And yes, that means that only 6% of the Dutch students do not drink alcohol. Therefore, we can definitely say that Dutch students drink. But of course, not everyone who drinks alcohol is also considered to have an alcohol addiction. So no, you're not an alcoholic when you just have 1 or 2 drinks.
We talk about an excessive drinker when men weekly drink 21 alcoholic drinks or more, and when women weekly drink 14 alcoholic drinks or more. For this definition, it is not necessarily important whether an individual drinks 2 or 3 drinks per day, or drinks 10 drinks when going out. Both mean that someone drinks excessively. There are also heavy drinkers. This means that 1 day or more days a week, someone drinks a lot in a day, 6 drinks a day for men and 4 drinks in a day for women. Looking at these numbers, you could perhaps think about whether you drink excessively or not.
Okay, so how much do Dutch students drink? When we talk about excessive drinkers, we talk about 6.8% of MBO students, 7.9% of HBO students, and 17% of WO students. When we talk about heavy drinkers, we talk about 17.9% of MBO students, 25.9% of HBO students, and 29.8% of WO students. This probably means that students have 1 or 2 or more days a week where they drink a lot of drinks rather than drinking 1 or 2 drinks per day.
We now know what excessive and heavy drinking are, but what actually is an alcohol use disorder? Let's see what our research says about that.
And yes, we think about drinking, we talk about great things like parties, hang out with your friends, festivals, a lot of things that students like to do. But that does not mean that students cannot have alcohol addictions. Alcohol addiction is defined by Jelinek as an alcoholic is someone who strongly desires alcohol, who cannot decrease and keeps using despite the harm the use brings on them. This is a more broad way of describing alcoholism. The following diagnostic criteria are from the DSM-5, the Manual for Diagnosis Psychiatric Illness, to describe alcohol use disorders.
Alcohol use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress, as manifested by at least 2 of the following, occurring within a 12-month period. 1. Alcohol is often taken in larger amounts or over a longer period than was intended. 2. There is a persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control alcohol use. 3. A great deal of time is spent in activities necessary to obtain alcohol, use alcohol, or recover from its effects. 4. Craving or a strong desire or urge to use alcohol. 5. Recurrent alcohol use resulting in failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, school, or at home. And 6. Continued alcohol use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by effects of alcohol.
7. Important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of alcohol use. 8. Recurrent alcohol use in situations in which it is physically hazardous. 9. Alcohol use is continued despite knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent physical or psychological problem that is likely to have been caused or exacerbated by alcohol. 10. Tolerance, as defined by either of the following: A need for markedly increased amounts of alcohol to achieve intoxication or desired effect. B. A markedly diminished effect with continued use of the same amount of alcohol. 11. Withdrawal.
About his alcohol addiction, Thomas says, and I quote, "If I wasn't drinking, I was shaking and I would feel miserable. To stop the shaking in the morning, I would drink after waking up a beer under the shower. Then I drank approximately a bottle of strong alcohol and a crate of beer a day. A year later, I also had to drink to silence my head and to calm down for a while. Also, to be able to sleep, I needed a drink." He also says, and I quote, "In a student association, everyone drinks a lot, so it doesn't stand out. That I had a higher tempo was something the others found student-like." Elisa says, and I quote, "A whole bottle of wine per evening, and then I sat fresh in class the next morning." She also says, and I quote, "I was told that it was a part of the student life, and it was definitely a phase. That's why I paid less attention to the warning voice in my head."
According to Kleinman, Eisenberg, and Good, we are going to focus ourselves on 2 of the 3 structural domains in order to give an answer to our question why excessive alcohol abuse is normalized among college students. In order to answer that question, we are going to focus on the 2 structural domains, popular and biomedicine. On top of that, we are going to focus on the influence of social media. Now we're going to focus on social norms and their correlation between peers and family. One of the 3 perspectives that we are going to talk about today to answer our question, why is excessive alcohol use among students normalized, is from the perspective of popular, where we refer to as influences of contact with, for instance, friends and family. We want to show the importance of interactions with peers as a determining factor on how much students consume alcohol. According to Basari and Carey, excessive drinking behavior among students can be acceptable because of social norms. Social norms can be an influence on someone's behavior, in this case on the consumption of alcohol. This mainly due to the social norms existing around drinking alcohol amongst university students where this behavior is normalized and where heavy drinking is not seen as something problematic. With students, it seems to be a sort of social norm to drink on a regular basis, as well as alcohol norms, who determine how much and how often students drink alcohol with their peers. Social norms influence college students and their drinking behavior. Here we refer to social norms as specific behavior that is normative for a group of people, in this case college students. Often students underestimate their own drinking behavior by comparing their drinking behavior to their peers. The consequence is that students are drinking even more with their peers, due to overestimating the alcohol consumption of their peers. Students who are the most integrated with other students are drinking most heavily, due to the social norms. Additionally, people such as resident advisors are trying to downgrade the use of alcohol among students, but they aren't successful, due to a misunderstanding of the social norms among college students. Smith et al. Show that the relevance of the perception students have on their own and their fellow students' alcohol consumption, especially the amounts of alcohol students drink, their fellow students and also their roommates drink. So if they have the perception that other students drink a lot, they might be more likely to drink much themselves as well. Next, we are going to watch a short interview of one of our fellow students.
Are you a student?
Yes.
Okay, so on average, how many glasses of alcohol do you drink per week?
I think it really depends on the week. Some weeks during the summer break, maybe a lot more. Others, when it's exam time, maybe less.
So on average?
Maybe 20.
Okay. And how would you define alcoholism?
I would say if you're unable to go without it, so if you feel like you need it to get through the day, or it's just part of a necessity like having a phone or food or any other necessities.
And would you define your alcohol use as a problem?
No.
Even if I told you that alcoholism in men is when you drink 21 drinks a week and women 14?
Well, I feel like students can be a bit of an exception because of the social environment.
Yes, would you say that
And
peers influence you to drink?
Not like forcing, but perhaps just the environment which is created. You don't want to be the only one who doesn't have a drink in their hand.
So would you say like in student life, it feels mandatory to drink?
Not mandatory, but I feel like you maybe sometimes go over what you wanted to just because you feel like the environment kind of encourages it and stimulates it.
Furthermore, there has been research on family interactions between students and their parents. When students move out of their house, parents get less significant influence on the drinking behavior of students. An institution, such as a university, could have more influence on the social norms among students. It wouldn't solve the problem, but they can influence it a little bit.
Students are maybe not aware of how alcohol problems can exist as health problems or have relation to mental health problems. There exist many reasons or causes for heavy drinking. Coping with stress, social anxiety, or having depressive disorders can contribute to alcohol problems. In Kaler et al.'s research on alcohol use by Generation Z, the students mostly talk about excessive alcohol use of their friends, but say that they don't know their limits. They say that they don't drink excessively. According to White et al., they also don't know exactly how much alcohol is in most drinks. From the viewpoint of the biomedical or professional domain of health, as described by Kleiman et al., we think that many students can't recognize when they are drinking excessively and it is an alcohol addiction. They think they're invincible to it. Maybe they don't reach out to professionals that can help them, and GPs will see their drinking behavior as students. This potentially helps the normalization of excessive alcohol drinking and is not being seen as a proper health problem.
We have talked about social norms and specifically those imposed on us by our immediate environment, such as our family and friends, and in this case, our fellow students. However, there is another element to our lives that can influence the social norms that can influence our behavior and our perception of said behavior. This other thing is, of course, social media. Think about how often you see people cheering on Instagram, posting pictures from parties they have been to. Maybe if you look through your own feed, you've posted some of those as well. According to Brunel and Hopley, the result of social media use is that students easily have misperceptions about how much and how often their fellow students actually drink. This research by Brunel and Hopley showed that students are influenced by social media to think that their fellow students consume 25% more alcoholic drinks than they actually do, and that they also go out drinking much more than they actually do, even up to 45%. This can easily make students think that more drinking and going out more often is normal, potentially influencing their own alcoholic consumption in some way. The importance of social media and its influence is perhaps also about how many people we follow. Some of us might follow hundreds to 1,000 people whose pictures we view on our social media feeds every day, thus potentially influencing us much more than we think. Results from Strauger et al. Say that there is a correlation between how many people you proportionally have on social media networks that post about drinking and how much students actually drink. Research by Hapton et al. Show some ways how social media can influence students and their way of thinking about drinking, perhaps even in a riskier way. For instance, Hapton et al. Showed that Facebook would be used to post about going out and drinking alcoholic drinks, and that specifically the more outrageous posts about drinking were seen as positive. Furthermore, Hapton et al. Also showed that the more negative things about going out and drinking behavior, such as hangovers,
We found that many
were
Dutch
not
students have
necessarily
behavior
being
which we
portrayed
can
as
define as
negative,
heavy drinking,
but rather positive
probably
things
heavier
that were
than many
part of the
students
amazing
perceive about
night they
their own
had
drinking
drinking.
behavior. There are multiple things that influence the drinking behavior of students. However, the most important influence for the normalization of excessive alcohol drinking we have recognized through our research is that of social norms, especially those created by our friends in a student life. Students' perception of normal drinking behavior and what actually means being a heavy drinker is heavily influenced by those social norms, as they make us think about what is normal and what is not. Perhaps through these perceptions, it is more difficult to recognize when someone is having problems with their alcohol use and their mental health in general for those individuals, but also of their friends and other students.